By the late 19th century, frustration with British rule had seeped deep into the rural districts of the Bengal Presidency. Decades of peaceful petitions had yielded little, and a growing faction began organizing for armed resistance. Within these villages, daily survival was its own struggle. Infant mortality rates were staggeringly high, routinely decimating families before children reached their first birthdays. One family in Midnapore, having already lost their older sons, turned to a local superstition. Following custom, the parents symbolically sold their newborn boy to his eldest sister, exchanging him for 3 handfuls of food grains to ward off death. In the local dialect, those grains are known as khud. From that transaction, the boy received his permanent name, Khudiram Bose. He survived childhood, but he rejected the quiet life his parents had bartered for. By the age of 18, he aligned himself with the Anushilan Samiti, a militant network preparing to force the British out of India by any means necessary. A boy whose early life was deemed so fragile he had to be traded for a handful of grain was now preparing to trade that same life to dismantle an empire. The Anushilan Samiti identified a specific target, Douglas Kingsford, the chief presidency magistrate, who had recently been transferred to the town of Muzaffarpur. On the evening of April 30, 1908, Khudiram and his fellow operative, Prafulla Chaki, positioned themselves in the shadows outside the local European club, watching the carriages line up. Around 8:30 p.m., a carriage matching Kingsford's typical transport departed the club. The 2 young men broke from their cover. Khudiram hurled a handmade canister bomb. It detonated against the side of the wooden carriage, shattering the vehicle entirely. But their intelligence was flawed. Kingsford was not inside. The passengers were the wife and daughter of a local British barrister, and both women absorbed the lethal force of the blast. Unaware of the error, Khudiram and Prafulla vanished into the dark, convinced they had successfully assassinated the magistrate. When the British realized what had happened, the splintered carriage became a catalyst. The colonial government launched an immediate nationwide manhunt, rapidly escalating their suppression of the Indian resistance. With 1,000 rupee bounty on their heads and armed police locking down the heavily guarded stations, Khudiram chose to travel on foot, covering 25 miles through the night. By morning, exhausted and dehydrated, he made a critical error. He stopped for a glass of water at a small tea stall in Waini. Suspicious constables approached him. A physical struggle broke out, ending abruptly when 2 concealed revolvers and 37 rounds of ammunition fell from his clothing. The 2 operatives met different ends. Cornered on a train platform, Prafulla Chaki fatally shot himself. Khudiram was arrested alive. Brought before the district magistrate in handcuffs, Khudiram shielded his network. Believing his partner was still alive, he gave a detailed confession, taking sole responsibility for constructing and throwing the bomb. The colonial authorities had secured their culprit, but by capturing him alive, they inadvertently supplied the Indian press with a defiant, unrepentant teenager who was entirely willing to face the gallows. The Muzaffarpur conspiracy case was designed to project absolute imperial authority. The British intended to make a swift, definitive example of the 18-year-old. These documents show the immense weight of the legal machinery deployed against him, with over 400 exhibits and 200 witnesses. Despite this, a team of Bengali lawyers worked pro bono, filing appeals and aggressively defending him through the summer. The Calcutta High Court dismissed the final appeal. On July 13th, the death sentence was confirmed. At 6 in the morning on August 11, 1908, Khudiram Bose was escorted out of his cell at Muzaffarpur jail. Walking toward the wooden gallows, he maintained total composure. Witnesses recorded he smiled as he clutched a copy of the Bhagavad Gita to his chest. When the news of his execution reached Calcutta, students and merchants flooded the streets, holding widespread mourning processions and closing down businesses. Prominent nationalist Bal Gangadhar Tilak published 4 landmark editorials in his newspaper Kasari. He openly defended the teenager's motives, framing the bombing as a direct, inevitable response to colonial oppression. The British had executed the boy to suppress the rebellion. Instead, they proved to the broader public that a new faction of the resistance was now willing to embrace death to ensure colonial rule could not survive in India.